Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jesse, and today I'm bringing you another reading vlog. In today's reading vlog, I'm going to be reading 3 Booktubers' best books of 2024. Last year I had you guys submit Booktubers and I selected them at random, but I decided this year I would do it a little bit differently. This year I decided that I would pick out new to me Booktubers just because I wanted to find some new people to subscribe to and find some new and fresh book recommendations. So what I ended up doing is searching best books of 2024 on YouTube and just selecting 3 random creators. The first one that popped up was Kalila D, and let me tell you, I'm so excited that I found her channel because I love her personality. Talk about charisma, talk about the joyful vibe she brings, talk about the amazing personality she has, like, she makes me want to read all the books. It was an instant subscribe situation for me. I'm a new fan. I love when you find a new YouTuber that just has like an infectious, good vibe. I combed through her best books of 2024 video. I did not fully watch the video because I want to have my own opinions and my own thoughts. I don't want the Booktuber's thoughts to kind of collide with my own thoughts. So I combed through her video, and let me just say there were so many books in her video that I love. Books like Funny Story, Just for the Summer, and Addie LaRue, like, can we say taste all together now? Taste? The book that I ended up picking out from her list is What Moves the Dead, and I also picked up the sequel. She did not talk about the sequel in her video, but I figured since I'm reading the first one, I might as well pick up the second one and read it as well. These are novellas, so they're super short. I've been wanting to read these books for so long. I have been craving reading these books, but I've just never been able to prioritize it, and now is the time. I am prioritizing these books, and I'm super excited about them. I read several books by Kingfisher last year, and I really loved them, so I've got a lot of excitement built up for these books. Hopefully they deliver and do the dang thing. In the first book, we're following Alex Easton, who learns the news that their best friend is dying. They immediately rush to be with their best friend, and when they get there, there's all these strange happenings. Their best friend is sleepwalking, they're talking in this strange language, and a mystery has just completely fallen in their lap, and they must uncover the truth behind the weird happenings. Now, this is a retelling of a short story by Edgar Allan Poe, one that I have not read yet, so I'm going in without knowing that story, so I hope that that doesn't like affect my reading experience at all. It's a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher, which I've heard great things about that, and I know that there's a lot of different retellings of that short story, so maybe reading this will inspire me to want to go and read that short story. I am very much so looking forward to this, and I can't wait to dive in, so let's not wait any longer. It's time to get to reading. I will update you guys once I finished What Moves the Dead. I did not realize how intense the shoulder pads are on this jacket until I started filming, so that's embarrassing. Car reading update time. I ended up finishing What Moves the Dead earlier today. This library glare. The only issue with utilizing the library more often these days is the fact that I get the worst glare on my library books. But honestly, I'm saving tons of money. I also love the library. Support your local library if you can. Anyway, we're not here to talk about library love, but I could do a whole video talking about my love for the library. What Moves the Dead. We're gonna start on some positive notes because I do have some positive things to say about this book, but overall I feel myself just feeling fine about this book. I just feel like fine about it. That's the best way I can put it. I really loved the writing style, which I think is a continued theme that I have when it comes to Kingfisher books. Their writing style is fantastic. Like, it's otherworldly. It's so good. The writing style in particular in this book is whimsical. It's sort of coated in this like dark fairy tale vibe, and I could just soak in it all day. Soak in it? Yeah, I could take a bath in it. I'd be down for that. A bath full of Kingfisher's words. Start drawing that bath right now. I'm ready to get in. I'm ready to dive in. I will plunge into that bath. We're getting off track here. I really love the writing. It's fantastic. Like, if there's one thing about Kingfisher's books, their writing style will always deliver. If I were to rate it... Loud car. If I were to rate it on the writing style alone, I would give it a 5 out of 5 stars. But unfortunately, we're not doing that today. We're not only rating this book on the writing style. I also really enjoyed the horror elements that came into play in this story. I feel like the author did such a good job of making things feel so creepy and gross, heavy on the grossness. There's this eerie feeling that sort of like looms throughout the book, and then there's grossness slung throughout this book. So if you're not into grossness, you might want to not with this book. Which I would say that this book leans pretty heavy into the function fungal horror lane, which is a thing. Fungal horror, if you didn't know, now you know. So those two things were the things that I really loved, the writing and the horror elements, but nothing else really grabbed me. I never really felt connected to the story, to the plot, to the characters. The characters specifically, I found to be the most unfortunate part of this story. There's probably like one standout character for me, and then everybody else just felt like they were just there. Like it felt very surface level, which I understand that sacrifices have to be made when it comes to a novella. You can't really expand on things in the way that you would in a normal novel, but I still felt like those things heavily affected my feelings towards the story, and it just pushed me into this place where I just felt fine about it. And then also, I don't know if it's because I didn't have context for the original story, but I just did not find myself all that... Why am I wanting to say enveloped? Enveloped by the plot? I did not find myself all that engrossed or invested. Invested in the plot. That's what I was trying to say. I did not find myself all that invested in the plot, and I wanted to be. I felt like there were seeds that were being planted to get me to be invested in it, but I never reached that point. So I think lack of character connection, lack of character depth, and little to no investment in the plot are the reasons why this book was not a banger for me. Again, this could have been a length issue, and maybe I should shift my perspective a little bit in recognizing the fact that this is a novella, and the author did the best that they could with the page length that they had, with the word count that they had. But I feel like I've just read so many novellas where those things were present, whether it be character depth or investment in the plot. I've seen it be done well before. Why can't it be done well in here? You know what I'm saying? So I don't really like using length as an excuse when it comes to novellas when I've seen other authors do all of those things justice. I ended up landing on a 3 out of 5 stars for this book. There were elements in it that I really enjoyed. It just was not enough to push it into like 5-star territory for me. I am still going to go ahead and read the second book, even though this one wasn't like the most favorable experience. I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time. There were obviously things that kept me reading to the end. So I'm interested to see what my experience will be with the second book, if I'll have a different experience, if it'll be better than the first book, or if it'll be worse than the first book. I'm very curious to see how I end up feeling about What Feast at Night. So I'm definitely going to be reading this one. I'm going to be reading this today, tonight, and tomorrow probably. Tonight I'm actually going to see the movie Companion, which I'm really excited about. I really love the main actress in this film. I've seen her in a couple of things now, and I feel like she always does a fantastic job. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I also feel like I've seen this trailer so many times that it's like ingrained in my head, because I went to the theater a lot in like the fall of last year, and this trailer played so many times. So I just feel like it's ingrained in my mind, and I am very curious to see how I end up feeling about the movie as a whole. So I'll keep you guys updated once I finish What Feast at Night, and I'll also tell you how I feel about Companion. Let's get to reading. Reading update time. I ended up finishing reading What Feast at Night, and honestly I feel similar about this book in the way that I feel about What Moves the Dead. I just kind of feel fine about it. Mind you, I really like some of the elements that were brought into play here, so let's talk about it before I get ahead of myself. In this book we are following the characters from book 1. We are kind of moving out of the horror that is presented in What Moves the Dead, and we are kind of introduced to much more of a folklore situation. Mind you, horrors are still at play. There's still some creepy elements that are brought into play, but I really loved the folklore elements that were introduced here. I feel like it was a great shift, a great pivot for this book to take and to kind of keep the story going, keep it evolving. And I just really loved sort of the creature element. I thought that that was just a great shift for this book to take. I think the key player as to why I am feeling just fine about this book, about the sequel, is because the ending just felt like it was so abrupt. Like it felt like a couple of chapters were missing, basically, because the ending just comes in out of nowhere, kind of. Like it just feels like this abrupt thing that comes out of nowhere and you're not ready for it. I'm like, whoa, we're already at the end. I feel like we need a few more chapters before we get to the ending. I was just like shocked. I was like, it's already over? I get it. It's a novella. I keep trying to stay in this mindset of like critiquing it in the form of a novella because there's things that the authors have to do when writing novellas in order to keep it short and sweet, and I get that. I just felt like the sacrifice made in this book was pretty significant, and I felt that sort of jump, that shortcut that was taken to get us to the end, and I just did not like it. I did not like that feeling, which is why I'm feeling just fine about this book. But truthfully, it does so many things that I loved. Like, I love the folklore element. I felt like because the characters were introduced in book one, and while I didn't like the shaping of those characters in book one, I felt like I got to know them quite a bit more and locked into their personalities and whatnot in this book, and I felt like I cared for them a lot more in this one. And I also think that the writing was top tier, god tier even. But again, that sort of ending jump, that shortcut, was significant enough to make me just feel sort of iffy about this book. I ended up landing on a 3 out of 5 stars for What Feast at Night. I feel like overall this series just didn't end up really being for me, truthfully. I really love T. Kingfisher. Like, I've read quite a few of their books and I really enjoy them, and I will continue reading books by them. But I think maybe I had really high expectations for this series because I've heard so many great things about it, and so maybe it was partly my own doing and having those high expectations. But I also feel like there are elements that I critiqued that are valid and that I wish would have worked out a little bit better. This is not to say that Kalila has bad taste, because clearly we have similar book taste with some of the books that are on her favorites list, like Funny Story, hello, Just for the Summer, hello, Addie LaRue, hello, Aggressively, hello. So we definitely have similar tastes. This is just one that I did not align with, unfortunately. But I do want to compare our thoughts. I'm gonna watch her favorite books of 2024 list finally, and I will come back and compare our thoughts. All right, I watched her video, and honestly, we have similar thoughts. Like, the things that she likes, I also liked about it. I just had like other critiques outside of those things that I liked. First up, she says she loves the eerie, creepy vibes, which me too. I loved the eerie, creepy vibes, specifically in book one. I feel like book one to me feels creepier than book two. I feel like the creepiness really comes through in the environment in book one. She thought it was witty and funny. I agree with this as well. I feel like there's so many great like character interactions sprinkled throughout both books, honestly. And then she said she loved all the detailing as well, which again, something else that I really loved. I felt like the author did a fantastic job of writing the vibes. So we pretty much agree. There were just a few nitpicky things on my end that I didn't like about it. Well, I didn't love them as much as Kalila did. I am thankful that she had What Moves the Dead on her list because it pushed me to read it. So thank you, Kalila. I will link her channel along with the video that I pulled this book from down below in the description, so go and show her some love. Now I want to talk about Companion because I went and saw it last night and it was so freaking good. I highly recommend going and seeing this movie if you're a fan of thriller movies that involve robots. Oh, it was so good. I feel like the acting was fantastic. The storyline was really interesting, and I just loved the execution overall. 10 out of 10. It was fantastic. It had me on the edge of my seat at times, and just like the way it wrapped up was so intense. I ate it right up. I feel like sometimes the concept of robots can kind of freak me out, but I really loved this concept specifically. It's sort of about robots being controlled and them taking that power and flipping the narrative, which is really terrifying, but for this scenario, for this movie situation, I feel like it worked really well, and it just chef's kiss. Fantastic. I loved it. Go watch it. It's the first movie I watched this year and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It feels good to start the year off with a banger. Okay, it's time to tell you about the next booktuber that I picked out and the next book that I'll be reading. All right, the next new to me booktuber that I picked out is Kate Lee. Again, I found her by just searching best books of 2024. She was one of the first ones that popped up. And honestly, I feel like Kate and I probably have different book taste, and that should maybe be like a red flag and should have me like not wanting to pick out a book from her list. But honestly, I'm the type of person that loves to read things outside of my comfort zone. I might not do it that often, but I really truly feel like it helps keep my reading life exciting. And honestly, I think it helps me stay out of a reading slump, because I feel like if you just read the same thing over and over again, at least for my personal reading life, I feel like if I just am reading the same thing over and over and over again, I get so bored. So I like to keep things exciting by reading different things, and I feel like reading a book from her list is going to help keep things different, keep things unique. From what I can tell with Kate's best list, which actually technically it was a worst list, best list, she went from worst to best, I think that she reads a lot of like literary fiction and perhaps classics, because the book that I chose from her list is a classic. I will not hide the title anymore. The book that I picked is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I've never read anything by Virginia Woolf. Obviously, I'm familiar with Virginia Woolf. I know that she's a notable author. I've just not read anything by her yet, so this will be my first step into her books. I'm very interested to see how I end up feeling about it. I will say, I'm very intrigued by the concept of this book. In this book, we are following Mrs. Dalloway, who is a bit of a sociologist White. She's an it girl, and I believe it all takes place in one day in June. She is preparing for a party, and there's a bit of a tone shift after the suicide takes place. I imagine this death affects the events that are taking place and affects the characters, and I'm very interested in this concept and seeing how the author explores this idea. I don't read classics often. In fact, it's probably been a few years since I've read a classic. Perhaps the last classic I read was 1984 by George Orwell. So it's been a minute. Actually, maybe the last classic I read was Rebecca. I think that was the last classic I read. It's been like 4 years? 4 years too long? So I'm excited to dive into this and see how I end up feeling about it. I'll keep you guys updated on the journey, and then eventually, once I finish the book, I will compare my thoughts to Kate's. Let's get to reading. Reading update time. I have made decent progress in Mrs. Dalloway. Spoiler alert, I'm really enjoying this book. I've made it to page 130. There aren't chapter breaks, which honestly is a little bit frustrating. I wish there were chapters in this book because I think it would make it easier to like pause and find like a stopping place, but there is no chapters, at least in the edition that I am reading, so that's been a little bit different. But so far, really enjoying this book. It is very different from what I would normally pick up for myself, and I do have like a main critique already because of course I do. I'm Mr. Nitpicky over here, but I really only have one big complaint, and I honestly don't even think it's that big of a deal. Like I think it's something that I'm able to like overlook, but it's the fact that the descriptions can sometimes be a lot. I'm like, why do we need to over-exaggerate every description ever? I am being a little bit over-dramatic. Are we surprised? No, but there are times when I just feel a little bit fatigued by the descriptions. I do like the fact that it's sort of a present to past story. We're following Mrs. Dalloway, our main character, and throughout this story she has moments where she is thrown back to her youth, thrown back to being younger, and her kind of reflecting on her past, and also sort of her dissecting where she's currently at in life, and just how some of her past things have impacted her present. We have moments where she'll meet somebody and it will remind her of somebody that she knew in her past and how that person impacted her life, and she'll reflect on that. I actually had something in this book that I strongly related to. Honestly, it's something that I feel like a lot of us relate to, but she has this moment where she thinks about somebody and a comment that they made about her to her face, and it's something that she is still thinking about today, even though it was like something that was said in passing and maybe might not have been something that that person meant to be as impactful as it was, but you see it still affecting her today. And that's something that I deal with a lot, is that I think about things that people have said about me to me long ago, like years ago, even from like my childhood, and it still like sticks with me, which, you know, is obviously a testament of be careful with your words, because words are powerful, words are impactful, and the things that are said can obviously stick with people. And, you know, be kind. Be kind with the things that you're saying to people. Bite your tongue more, okay? Our main character, Mrs. Dalloway, I don't want to say that she's having an identity crisis necessarily, because I don't think that it's an identity crisis, but I think she is at a spot in her life where she is examining where she's at. She's figuring out who she is and who she wants to be moving forward, and reflecting on who she once was. Something that I found really interesting and was not expecting in this book is sort of Mrs. Dalloway kind of questioning her sexuality a little bit. We have a flashback of a friendship between Mrs. Dalloway and a woman named Sally, I want to say. Is that right? Sally? I think it's Sally. I hope that I'm correct in thinking that. I think it's Sally. Sally and her had a friendship that bordered the line of a romantic relationship. They had like a physical romantic moment, and it's just really interesting seeing our main character, Mrs. Dalloway, kind of reflect on that relationship and how it impacted her and how it makes her think today. It was just a nice little surprise and not something that I was expecting. Hints of a female-female relationship. I would love to see it be explored more in the second half, but I genuinely don't think that it will be, but just a nice little surprise, a nice little unexpected moment. I will say this book can at times be a little bit difficult to understand, but I have just been like taking my time with it and letting things process, and also sometimes rereading passages just to make sure that I understand what it's saying or what it's trying to say. But I also feel like this is one of those books where things can be interpreted in several different ways, so there's not one right way to interpret things that are going down throughout the story. But I'm really enjoying it. I am not like diehard loving it, but I think, you know, if I were to give it a rating at this point in my reading experience, I would give it a 4-star rating, which is really solid. I'm excited to keep reading and to see what happens next. I am getting ready to leave the house because this is one of our only sunny days that we're planning on having this week. It's supposed to get like freezing cold the next few days, and the rest of the week it's going to be gray, but the sun is shining today, which is beautiful, which is stunning. I love to see it. I love to see the sun out, and I just like need to go get outside knowing that we're only going to have have gray days for the rest of the week and it's going to be miserable and I'm going to be depressed. I need to get outside and be in the sunlight today. So that is happening. I also have this like random urge to go to Barnes & Noble and pick up the book Myrtle. I don't know if you guys know anything about Myrtle. I don't know all that much about it yet, but it's basically like a fun little activity book where you play as a detective and you have to solve these different mysteries. I don't know why, but I've just been craving it. I think I was honestly influenced, to be honest, because I saw somebody post about it on their Instagram story and I was like, oh, I really want to do that. I want to see if I'm any good at solving some murder cases. So I think I'm gonna go and pick up a copy of that today, potentially. Reading update time. I finished reading Mrs. Dalloway, and while this book was a bit of a struggle bus for me, like I really had a hard time in terms of like taking in the writing style, and there were definitely moments where I had to like reread passages and just like take my time to dig and dig and dig in order to like connect things. I am leaving this book feeling happy that I read it and satisfied with it overall. Like I did really enjoy the process of reading this book, and I do feel like it is a book that has a lot to say, and I feel like it's one that I could reread, and each time I reread it, get something new from it. So it's one of those experiences. What I gathered from this book and what I kind of took away from it is that it really is an exploration of these characters and sort of this idea of how the past affects who we are today, but also how it can like negatively impact your life to look back and reflect, because you can kind of find yourself comparing your current situation to your past situation and thinking and convincing yourself that the past was better than your present, and how that comparison can sometimes be troublesome. I feel like I oftentimes will do that. Like I will look back in the past and I will sort of romanticize what things used to be like. But honestly, I feel like things are the best they've ever been currently in my life, and I just need to appreciate what's in front of me instead of like constantly looking back. It's a struggle for me though, because I am such a nostalgic person. Like I love the euphoria that comes from nostalgia, but I will say the euphoria that comes can sometimes paint things differently than what they actually were. We see how some characters might not feel all that fulfilled in their current relationships, and how comparing their past relationships affects their current relationships. I think that that is a really interesting element as well, and also something that can be very troublesome to compare a past relationship to your current relationship. So I guess the thing that this book was for me was an exploration of these characters and how the past can be utilized to impact your life positively or negatively. It really just depends on how you approach it, and I really enjoyed that process and seeing how it kind of came together in the end. The writing wasn't necessarily my favorite. It was a bit hard for me to kind of like wade through it, but once I kind of got a grasp on it, I was able to start to put things together better. And I also didn't really like love the plot, but I also recognized the fact that like it was more so character exploration. But I think I am leaving this book appreciating it a lot, because it's one of those books that has me just like reeling over everything that happened in it and reeling over all the themes that were brought up throughout this book. And it's definitely one that I feel like I will think about often. I personally think I'm gonna land on a 3.5 out of 5 stars. That's just where it lands with my preferences. I really enjoyed it, and I'm very glad that I got the chance to read it. So thank you, Kate, for having this on your list. I'm now going to actually watch Kate's video and then come back and compare our thoughts. Alright, I watched her video, and turns out that this is one of her favorite books of all time, and that she just reread it last year, and it just landed as one of her favorite books from 2024, which is valid. She starts off by saying that she loves the energy of the writing and the intensity of it. This is the one point that I don't necessarily align with her with, but that's just because I feel like the writing style was sort of new for me. Again, I'm not like the biggest classics reader. You all know this. I hardly ever pick up a classic book, so I think that that alone made it difficult for me to get through this book, but I'm also just like not familiar with Virginia Woolf's style. But once once I did get adjusted like later on in the book to the style of writing, I think I was able to kind of connect with it and click with it better. She mentions the fact that it might be hard to get into, but once you're in it, you're absorbed by it. And this is definitely a point that I agree with, because I definitely hit a point when reading this book where I was just like fully in it. I was like really excited about reading it. It still took me forever to read because I was processing everything really slowly, but I still found myself in a place where everything just started to feel really real, and I loved that experience. It's definitely a book that I started to feel myself completely falling into. And she wraps up her thoughts by saying she loves how philosophical it is and how it explores defining who we are as people. And yes, this is one of my favorite elements of the story, is the fact that there's just so many messages threaded throughout it, so many interesting character exploration bits. You do see a lot of different perspectives, and it just offers up so many different ideas and thoughts while you're reading this book. And that's definitely something that I loved. I think I mentioned the fact that like this is a book where I could see myself rereading it and get so much more out of it from the rereading process. And I do hope that one day I come back to this book and pick it up and read it again, because I think it is one that I would really love even more with a second read. So I hope that one day I come back to this book. But thank you, Kate, for having this on your favorites list, for pushing me to read this book. I definitely really enjoyed the reading experience, and it's always nice to have something to kind of like push me to pick up a classic. So thank you, Kate. I will leave a link down below in the description to her channel along with her favorites video. Go and check her out. Go and show her some love. Update on the Myrtle situation. This is so much fun. I've only done a couple of the Myrtles so far, and by couple I mean I've only done 3. But I really love it. I think this is so much fun. Mind you, I'm only in the elementary stage of this book so far, and it gets harder as you go, I believe. So I feel like there will be a point when I'm just like scratching my head as I'm doing it, just so confused out of my mind. But so far, it's been really fun. It's sort of like a Sudoku kind of vibe, but I would recommend it if you're somebody that like loves trying to solve mysteries while you're reading or while you're watching like some kind of mystery show. I feel like if you're the type of person that is just like trying to put clues together and figuring it out before the reveal, I would highly recommend checking out Myrtle, because that's basically what this book is. Like, you are the detective and you are trying to figure it out, and I just think it's so much fun. So highly recommend Myrtle if you are a murder mystery lover or a mystery lover in general. I feel like you would have a lot of fun with this. It was a little bit confusing at first, but once I got the hang of it, I was in it. Mind you, again, I've only done 3, so I need to give it more of a go. I need to get into like the harder ones to really know and test myself. I'm actually a little bit nervous about the harder ones because they look like a lot, but I'm gonna go in open-minded and give it my best shot. We'll see how it goes. Let's go talk about my final booktuber choice for this video and my final reads. The last booktuber that I ended up picking out for this video is Lydia is Reading. I really love her energy, her vibe. I love her book recommendations. I feel like her channel started out as a writing channel, and then she started weaving in some booktube content. So if you love writing, if you love books, go and check out her channel. Link down below in the description. I ended up picking out 2 books from her best books of 2024 list. Again, I did not fully watch her 2024 list video. That way I don't take in her thoughts and get them mixed up with my own thoughts, but I picked out 2 books from her list. The first one is a graphic novel called If You'll Have Me, and then the other one is called Before Ever After. I'm actually going to start with Before Ever After, so I'll share what this one is about, and then I'll talk about this one when I get around to reading it. This is a middle grade book written in verse, and we are following a character named ZJ. ZJ's father was basically this like iconic football player. He is seen as a hero to many people, but one day his dad ends up having medical issues, and this kind of causes a strain in their relationship. So we're following this father-son relationship and watching as they're figuring out how to navigate it while also dealing with this health scare that has popped up. I've read a few Jacqueline Woodson books in the past. I've read Brown Girl Dreaming and If You Come Softly, and I really loved those books, so I was really excited to see that Lydia had this on her list, because I've been meaning to pick up more books by Jacqueline Woodson and try out more books by her, because obviously I love those books, so why would I not want to read more books by her? Like, hello! The time has finally come. I'm very excited to dive into this, so without further ado, let's get to reading. Reading update time. I finished reading Before the Ever After, and this book ended up being just so heartfelt and impactful and emotional. I told you the premise, but I myself didn't even know like what was happening, like what the health issue was going into this book with our main character's dad, with ZJ's dad. Basically, his dad has CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and it's something that a lot of football players end up having to deal with. It causes things like memory loss, which is one of the big things that happens in here. We've got impulsiveness, confusion, just about like what's going on around you. And there's a lot of other symptoms. I feel like it's really nice when a book kind of exposes you to something that you don't know all that much about. I feel like CTE is something that I truthfully didn't know all that much about going into this book, and that might be because I'm like not the biggest sports person. Like the Super Bowl's coming up and your boy does not plan on participating and watching it. I'm gonna be having a book bowl because books are my sport. Book Bowl 2024, anyone? It was really interesting learning about CTE though, and kind of seeing the ins and outs of it and how it affects a family, because throughout the story we're seeing how it kind of disrupts this family. This book takes place at a time when it was sort of new and not really that known, and so we're kind of seeing this family trying to figure out what's going on with the dad, but because they don't have like a title for what he's going through, they're just kind of having to work through it in a really rough way. The son is really young and is just confused by what's happening, confused by why his dad is changing so much, and he just wants his dad to show up in the way that he had been showing up all his life, but his dad is showing up differently now, and it's really confusing and really hard on him. And I think that that's what makes this book so emotional and so impactful, is having somebody that you know and love kind of shift and change in a way where you don't know how to help them because you don't really know what's going on. I really love the writing style. Again, it is written in verse. I just feel like this format was made for Jacqueline Woodson because she already, as it is, has a very poetic way of writing that this sort of format of writing in verse just works so well for her. While this book is really short, I never felt unsatisfied by it. I feel like you get a really deep understanding for the characters and their bonds, specifically ZJ and his dad. You understand why they're so close to each other. Outside of the fact that like they're father and son, they have several things that connect them. The one that I'm thinking of specifically is music. They both have a love for music. So we get all these little details about their personalities, their bonds, and it really pushes this story into a really solid place. I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really loved it. It just did not reach 5-star territory for me. I'm now going to watch the part of Lydia's video where she talks about Before Ever After, and I will come back and compare our thoughts. Okay, yes, not surprised at all that we feel very similar. She says, it's beautiful to see the father-son relationship. It's heartbreaking and that it's impactful seeing the family sort of join together to figure things out and heal. We agree on all the things, and I'm really glad that Lydia had this in her video, because I honestly didn't even know that this book existed. Even though I love Jacqueline Woodson's books, I'd not heard of this book yet, so I'm glad that I was able to pick this book up and read it. So thank you, Lydia. I'm now going to be switching gears and reading another one of Lydia's favorites, just because this one was so short that I wanted to read another one from her video. So I'm going to be reading this graphic novel called If You'll Have Me. This is a sapphic romance situation. We're following this girl named Momo, who is a bit of a people pleaser. She just really wants to make sure everyone in her life feels good and that everybody is happy. And we've got PG, who's a bit of a lonesome wolf, likes to kind of keep to themselves, and we're following Momo and PG as they form a relationship, have a little meet cute moment. I'm excited to see what the meet cute is because I love a meet cute moment. And then we follow them as they form their relationship and all the highs and lows that come with starting a relationship. So I'm excited to get into this one. The art style looks so cozy and cute, so I can't wait to dive in. Definitely planning on diving in today. My friend Kathleen is in town, so we're going to be getting together today and hanging out. We might go to like an antique store or something. I don't really know what the plan is exactly, but I am excited to see her, but I'm also really excited to see her dog Wendy, because her dog Wendy also came with her, so expect some montage clips of Wendy. The good old dog, Wendy. She's the cutest. Let's get to reading. Let's get to hanging. Let's do the thing. Reading update time. I ended up finishing If You'll Have Me, and this was like a cute explosion. It made me feel so happy while reading it, and I love that in any kind of story, in any kind of capacity. If it makes me happy, I will be satisfied. It was just such a cute story, seeing this development of this relationship and getting to know these characters. We've got Momo, who is somebody that I heavily related to. She's the type of person that like wants to make everyone around her happy. She's very much so a people pleaser to a fault, and we see how that affects her and impacts her negatively. Being a people pleaser can be a good thing, but it also can be very negative and impact your life very negatively. And we see moments where it really affects her and weighs on her heavily. Then we've got PG. I almost called them PJ. It's PG. PG is a character that has a bit of a backstory that sort of affects how they move in relationships, because they've been through a really like heartbreaking relationship, and it just like affects their current relationships. And so it was really interesting to kind of like unravel that. I feel like PG is like such a smooth character. Like they've got the moves, they're a sweet talker, and it was just like so fun seeing them like lay it on thick throughout the story. I just overall had such a good time with it, and this was probably my favorite book of this video. I ended up landing on a 4 out of 5 stars. It just did not reach 5-star territory for me. I'm now gonna go watch Lydia's thoughts and then come back and compare, which I feel like we're just gonna feel the same way. It's gonna be a love fest over If You'll Have Me. Okay, I was correct in thinking that this is just going to be a love fest, because Lydia had similar feelings to me. She said it's really cute, she loved seeing their relationship develop, and it's an overall comforting read. Yes, 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 1000%, we are on the same page. I will link Lydia's channel and her video down below in the description. Be sure and go and show her some love. It is now time to rank the books from least favorite to favorite. I feel like I already have an idea as to where I want to rank things. In last place, we have What Feast at Night. I overall just ended up feeling fine about this duology, but I feel like I didn't like this one as much as I liked the first one, which the first one comes next on the list. We've got What Moves the Dead. Overall, again, just felt fine about it, but I still want to read more books by T. Kingfisher, because I've read some amazing books by them, and I just know that they are a very talented author. So looking forward to reading more books by them in the future. Next, we've got Mrs. Dalloway. I did end up really enjoying this one. I found it to be a bit challenging in terms of the writing style, but once I was able to like get over that hump, I found myself really enjoying the story and the messages that were popping up throughout this one. Then we've got Before the Ever After. This one was fantastic. I loved the writing style, and it was a very like heartbreaking and very impactful read. In first place, we've got If You'll Have Me. I just love this book so much. It was so much fun, and it really just like made me feel so happy. And I will always love when a book makes me feel that way. So those were my rankings. I want to hear from you guys down below in the comments. Let me know if you have read any of these books and what your thoughts are on them. If you have not read any of these books, and just let me know down below in the comments what you're currently reading and how you're feeling about it so far. I'm immediately turning around and starting my next reading vlog, which is going to be me reading Booktuber's worst books of 2024. So keep your eye out for that. That will be like my last 2024 video, I'm pretty sure. If you like this video, be sure to go and hit that like button. If you want to see more bookish content from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe, or go and hit that bell icon, and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope your day is bright, that tomorrow is brighter. Keep reading what your heart desires, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye-o!